Or
Um, what Jay said was kind. I was curious. I was also arrogant. So how can someone uh, who's curious be such a know-it-all about something I knew nothing about? I walked into that meeting. I think I dressed up for it. I thought, I don't want anybody to know that I have a problem. So I'm going to wear a jacket and wear some glasses. I didn't wear glasses at the time, but I thought glasses would be a disguise for me because I didn't know what you guys are up to, and I knew it wasn't going to work for me. But I could probably figure it out on my own because I'd spent about a year going to another program, good program, adult children of alcoholics. And I went for almost a year until I realized that neither of my parents were alcoholics. I was the alcoholic. And so through a kind of a some people call them God shots, but I met a lovely young uh, woman at a party, and I just saw that she's speaking. She's one of the speakers at a marathon meeting in at the log cabin. So I haven't stayed in touch with her, but she is still sober in the program. Anyway, as she was leaving my office, I was working in Hollywood. I was arrogant, I was sarcastic, and she left, and I had learned that phrase, keep coming back. And I learned it in ACA, and beautiful program. I'm the alcoholic. She's leaving my office, and I said, thanks for coming. Keep coming back. And she spun around and she looked at me and she said, are you in the program? And I said, yep. And she found out that I was in ACA. And I said, because I'm not an alcoholic. And she gave me a look of like I was out of my mind because the only time I had met her was at a party and I was drunk and I tried to light her cigarette and I instead lit my eye on fire. And so she called me out. And I think, who knows why we ever end up in AA for the first time, but I didn't think I was coming in here for any other reason but maybe to prove to her I'm not really an alcoholic. I'll show you. I'll go to a meeting and I'll know that I'm not. And Jay said that he and Nancy were there and they had, I guess you had about 6+ months, maybe, yeah, about 6 months. And I thought, these guys are unbelievably friendly. Wow. They, Jay and Nancy, they came up to me and they said hello to me and they were so welcoming. And it scared the crap out of me. And I did go back to that meeting for some time, but I changed my meeting schedule so that I started to go to bigger meetings where I could hide out. I just wanted to check AA out. I don't want to get to know anybody. I'm afraid if I get to know you, I'm either going to be like in a war movie, you get to know your buddy and then he gets shot, by a sniper. So don't get to know anybody because we're going to get picked off here. I mean, I had crazy ideas about what the program was, but of course I knew everything. It's not going to work for me, and I'll prove that it's not going to work for me because what I will do is I'll do everything you weirdos are talking about. Read the book. Okay, I'll immediately buy the book. I will start reading it. You said get a sponsor. Okay, what's a sponsor? I'll get one. I didn't have a sponsor in the other program in ACA because I was only checking that out. Do the steps. How do I do the steps? The steps up on the wall? Uh, I've got my own steps. I have my own program. I had been able to stay after knowing I had a problem for, I think, 10 or 12 years, from 1977 to 1989. I was able to get some time away from alcohol and other substances. Please excuse me if I mention some of them. If I do, I should really just call them jaywalking, because I did a lot of jaywalking in addition to drinking. And well, I'll skip back because I actually have a bunch of time. But I will just say this. I grew up in New York City. I grew up in a very comfortable, affluent home. There was no real alcoholism. My parents were not out of control drunks. My mother did drink a lot of wine at dinner, and they had parties. My dad worked in consumer products, and they would have these kind of madmen parties, and people would come over who were in advertising, and there'd be a lot of drinking. And people in the old days, they would smoke cigarettes in the house, and we had these cigarette jars, and just cigarettes were stuffed everywhere, and people are smoking and laughing. And as a 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, I just thought that this is exciting. I want to be a grown-up someday. I want to be able to do that. And I think, I mean, I did have my stomach pumped when I was 3 years old, because I took a handful of blue pills that my mother had. I have no idea what they were, but she said, what did you do? And I said, I spit them out. And I'd sucked off the candy coating of these pills. I think sugar was my first addiction. Sugar and watching a show. Again, I'm 66. I grew up in the 60s mostly, and I watched this show called Superman with George Reeves. And it was like, if I could watch that show all like 24/7, I would have done it. I love that show. And they used that show to discipline me in kindergarten. Richard was good today. He can watch Superman. And so that was my life, just, oblivious, just, I did have my stomach pumped out. My mother was worried that maybe I took some of those pills, and I think it's possible they were Valium, because she did take a lot of Valium. Anyway, fast forward, I just always felt a little bit like I didn't fit in. My dad was Jewish, not practicing. My mother was Episcopalian, not practicing. We would go to church. Merry Christmas, anyone out there who celebrates Christmas? I go to church in the summertime when I'd visit mom's parents, my grandparents. I love them. They were super kind to me, loving. And I went to the Episcopal church, and it wasn't my faith, but I don't know, there was something about it that years later I was drawn to, and I converted to Catholicism, and then I stopped going to that. I don't want to be in a club. I don't want to be in a group. I just want to live my own life and be a loner. So when I discovered alcohol, I was about 12 years old. My parents had a very full liquor chest, and we would just take the whiskey and we'd pour ourselves. I had 3 siblings, and we would pour ourselves little. I hope this isn't triggering, but I loved alcohol, and we would make these little whiskey sours, and we had one of those kind of silver shaker things, and we fill it with ice and make drinks when mom and dad were away, and it was fun, and there was no problem. And then they sent me away to a school, and I think the first Saturday of that school, I met up with a guy. He lived across the hall, and he said, "Hey, I've got a pint of tequila." And I never taken tequila before, but I wanted to fit in. And so I remember we were walking to the dance, and somehow we ended up in the woods, and we were chugging this tequila, and I got terribly sick, and we eventually made it to the dance, and I thought, I need to learn how to drink, because that's what you do if you're old, if you're grown up. And when I was 14 at that school, I had the face of a 13-year-old girl. And it was embarrassing to me that I had such a feminine face. And I don't think I've ever shared this in AA before, but I got the lead role in the play when I was in 8th grade. And I thought, I am hot shit, except the lead role of the Shakespeare play, they did it, and it was a boys' school. And so I played the girl. I played a girl in a play, and that like kind of was in my head for years. I'm not a real man. I don't have a girlfriend. Why did they make me the girl? I did have the most lines. So it's like ego and feeling like I'm a weirdo. So I got thrown out of that school because after, I'll just talk about drugs very quickly. I smoked pot every day of ninth grade. I didn't like pot. I hated it, and I smoked it every day. And when I came back to the school in 10th grade, I made a decision as a 15-year-old. I am not smoking pot every day. Instead, I'm going to take LSD and drink. LSD only on special occasions. And within September, October, November, within 3 months, I was expelled from that school. And that was another great shame that I had. I'm a weirdo. I don't know how to drink. I don't know how to take drugs correctly. And I'm getting thrown out of the school. And my father loved that school. He sent all of us to that school. He was the president of the board of trustees of that school. And so I learned a very valuable lesson that you don't get strings pulled for you in my family. And I guess I'm glad looking back that he didn't try to pull any strings. But how can you get strings pulled if you're the LSD dealer at the school? So I turned my life around in 10th grade. I flushed all the drugs down the toilet. I started to pay attention in school, and I did very well. I did meet up with friends from the school on weekends. They would come down from the school in Connecticut to New York City, and we would go out. This was at a time in the early 1970s when you'd be served alcohol in certain bars in New York. And alcohol, I knew that I didn't want to screw up again, but alcohol on the weekends was something that it gave me a feeling of belonging for the first time. I would go out with my friends from school. I learned how to drink mostly responsibly. My dad had said, listen, when you drink scotch and soda because it tastes so bad, you won't drink it fast. But I would be ordering the whiskey sours because I loved the way they tasted. 10th grade was successful for me. I was able to drink on weekends, kind of a periodic binge drinker. 11th grade rolled around. I got very involved in the school. And by 12th grade, I applied to colleges, and I applied to 3, and I got into 2 of them, and I was waitlisted at a 3rd. And I thought, I've done it. I've turned my life around. I'm okay. I can drink. I know that I have a tendency to enjoy it too much. So I just limit myself to 4, 5 at the most. And weighing 145 pounds at the time, 4 or 5 drinks was a lot for me. And I remember there had been this lovely girl who, after I got thrown out, I was on the school bus. And the first thing that she said to me, she came up to me with a friend, and I thought, oh my God, these 2 girls are coming up to me to talk to me. This school's going to be okay. What she said was, hi, Richard, do you know where we can get any good acid? And so I thought, my past has followed me. I can't become friends with people at this school. If I become friends with people, I will be invited to do things with these people. It's safe for me to get together with my friends from the boarding school because I'll only see them on weekends. And I just made up all these crazy rules in my head. And I didn't have any friends in 10th grade. In 11th grade, I had friends that I did activities with, but I was afraid. And so basically I was a loner in high school, and uh and just feeling so ashamed that I'd been expelled from that school. And there was a strange man who would call me up, and he was the father of a former classmate of mine from elementary school. And I thought, you see, I'm such a weirdo that there's this man, like, why is he calling me? Why is he calling me and talking to me about cocaine on the phone? And I can't tell my parents because they'll think that I did something. And and this guy was obviously grooming. I didn't know the word grooming, but he's a strange guy. And finally, maybe 5 months into it, I told my dad. Um, and my dad, I've had issues with my dad over the years, but my dad was like a hero at the time. And he called this man up and he said, "Don't ever call my son again." And so my dad really was in my corner. I I've got a loving mother. She passed away in 2016. My father is 97, almost 98 in Florida. They they were great parents. I, I'm so glad that I don't have to figure out, like, well, why did I drink? There's no chapter like figure it out in our book. I I I think the doctor's opinion, he talks about people drink because they like the effect it produces. And I remember when I was in early AA and people said, read the doctor's opinion. And I thought, the doctor's opinion? What does he know? I mean, that was the arrogance in my head. Back up, high school, get into a good school, very good college. And in the last few months of the high school, I'd said to this girl, I ended up going out with that girl who asked me about the LSD because, of course, I'm going to be attracted to her. And of course, I'm going to want to go out with her. And I remember asking her after I got into colleges in April, I said, "Do you know where we can get any cocaine?" Because I'd been reading in Time magazine that it wasn't addictive. And and they were on my resentment list, Time and Newsweek, because they did have those articles, but I didn't have to make amends to them. I slowly got sucked into this world of, I'll call it jaywalking now, because I don't want to say the name that much. And I spent all the money that I had. I inherited a huge amount. To me, it was huge. It is a huge amount of money. $10,000 when my aunt died, and it all went up my nose. And I got to that point where I I wasn't thinking about anything. I had to leave college, work hard to get back in, and then even after flunking out, I I was, again, another thing I was ashamed of, but I was able to get back in. I think that was always my kind of life pattern. Like, the wheels would come off, and then I'd work really hard, and I can fix this. I can fix this on my own. And so I did get back into that college, and I did graduate. But within a few months, I was buying bigger quantities than ever, and looking out the window and seeing the imaginary police or FBI setting up a command post, and thinking they were real. And that was in 19 when I graduated, it was 1981. I spent the next 8 years kind of doing a white knuckle thing where I knew I cannot take these substances. I know that I can't. And then a certain amount of time would go by. And meanwhile, I'm drinking moderately, but not. And it was always when I was drinking that I would have this idea that I've been away from that substance long enough. I think I can do that again. And so I spent 8 years living in fear, really constant fear that the phone would ring and some old dealer would say, "Hey, is this still your number? Do you want anything?" So I was afraid to answer the phone. Um, I had a great job in advertising after college, which I burned my way out of. Moved to Los Angeles. I had started a business, which ended up being a very successful business for the guy that I had hired. And then he took it off my hands because I was too busy. And then I remember seeing him on the Johnny Carson show and thinking, I'm going to kill that guy. That's my life that he's living. So fast forward, I went to ACA for a year because I ran into another godshot. I ran into my brother's closest friend from high school, also that same school. I ran into him in LA, and we had been doing this kind of guerrilla posting of artwork around town. And I thought, oh, wow, I'm running into Jeffrey. And we had lunch or coffee, and somehow he brought up this program, ACA. And I said, oh, well, I don't think my parents are really alcoholic. And he said, well, you can substitute the word rageaholic for alcoholic. And does that fit? And my dad was kind of a rager. And so a lot of emotion came up for me. And I had been a seeker. A friend of mine from elementary school told me about the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And I thought, oh, I'm going to go to that. That will get me off of the drugs. And I went for a while until my friend who took me there ended up in Australia, and they gave him a church. And then he called me in LA to say that he had taken the church funds, and he was in a casino in Brisbane, and he had gambled them and he'd lost. But if I could please wire transfer him a few $1,000s, he knows that he can win the money back. And I at least knew that that was crazy. And I had that thought, wow, he's an alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic. I don't know what can I do about this? And that was around the time that I met that woman at the party. And in defiance, I went to my first meeting, and I see Jay. And I wish I could tell you I had a good attitude, but I told you that I didn't want to go back to a meeting where people would know me. And so I went to bigger meetings, and I hid out in the middle because I heard people sharing, saying, don't sit in the back, or don't stand in the back. And then people would look around to see the people standing in the back. And I didn't want anybody to look at me standing in the back. The back was good, because if you're in the back, then in this meeting, I was at the Log Cabin or these big meetings in LA, you could just disappear and go back to my car. But then they're going to look at me. So, and I don't want to be in the front, because if you're in the front, then why are you in the front? What's wrong? You have it bad? I mean, these are the thoughts that were in my head. I remember something, it's not in the book. Oh, I should have said this earlier. This is all my opinion, mostly. And if you don't hear anything that's helpful, please go to another meeting. Anything that's useful probably is something that comes out of the book, and I'm going to be quoting from the book. But here's something I heard in meetings. It's not in the book, I don't think. We don't think our way into right actions. We act our way into right thinking. Okay. I came into the program. I met Jay and Nancy. I stopped drinking completely from that day. I'd had a few years off of the drugs, and the fog was lifting. So I sat with it, and I could figure it out. We don't think our way into right action. We act our way into right thinking. Oh, okay. Well, I want to have right thinking. What action are you talking about? So that's why it was good for me to have a sponsor at that time. And if you're new, you can stay sober, you can white knuckle it, you can read the book on your own. You don't need a sponsor. I don't think the word sponsor is in the first 164 pages of the big book, and it's recommended that you get a sponsor. And it's so great to have somebody you can call, and you can ask them the question that I asked my sponsor when I was new in my first week. I got a sponsor, I think it was definitely in my first 2 weeks, because I did something you guys said, don't do this in your first year. Don't make any major changes. And I was making two major changes. I got on an airplane within 2 weeks to fly to the Philippines to meet a woman I'd been in college with, and to ask her, please come to LA. I didn't say I was going to marry her, but we ended up getting married. Amazing woman. So I also started a new business. And those were two big changes in my life in my first year. And I thought, it doesn't say you can't do it in the big book. That's how defiant I was. So the great thing about having a sponsor is I could say to him, what do I do now? And so I told him I wanted to start doing the steps, because I thought, geez, I've heard some people share that, if you don't do a fourth step, you might drink again. And I already was in for about a week, and I thought, I don't want to drink again. I don't want to use drugs again. What do I do? And my sponsor said, okay, well, you write this at the top of a piece of paper. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Okay. And then he said, and then write about it. Write about how you're powerless over alcohol and drugs, if you want to write about that, and write about how your life was unmanageable. And I thought my life was manageable. I thought, yes, I have a problem with substance. Yes, I have a problem with alcohol. I tend to drink it too much once I start. But my life is kind of manageable. I have a home. I'm not living in a car. And I was basically still kind of in the remnants of working my old program. My old program was, we have a we program. Jay mentions that when he shares, if you don't mind my saying so, Jay. It's a beautiful thing to be reminded about. This is a we program. I could come in, sit in the rooms, see the first step on the wall. We admitted we were powerless. So it wasn't, no finger was being pointed at me. Like, if someone had pointed a finger, it's like, you have to do this because you have a problem. I don't want to be told anything by anybody. But if I'm coming into a room and it says we, well, who's we? I mean, you guys. We, that's what you did. We did that. I want to be part of the we, because I don't want to have these compulsions anymore. I'm over here, I'm an I hiding out. How can I become a we? By taking action, because we act our way into right thinking. Okay, my program had been, I admitted nothing except that I was all powerful, and that alcohol and drugs made my life more manageable. That had been my program for many, many years. And finally, I'm being taught your program. After I did that, I showed Jeff what I'd written, and he said, you don't even have to show me. This is not your fourth step. It's just step one. But he looked at it and he said, great. And he didn't say, now we're going to do step two. He let me say, okay, well, what do we do now? Can I do step two? I'm so grateful to Jeff. He was, he's the guy who he shared at the hospital share and care meeting, a big meeting on a Sunday, I think. I'm not sure. I don't think it's still there in LA. And I heard so much of my story and his story. And that's how we do it. We're different. We're people who ordinarily would not mix, is what it says in the book. So if what I'm saying sounds like Martian, go to another meeting. And, if we have an open attitude, my experience has been that we receive what we need to receive when we need to receive it. And I know I'm jumping around, but I have to say that frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. And for years, I know the book. I've read it many times. I love the book. For some reason, I thought that what it said about frothy emotional appeal was frothy emotional appeals don't work. It doesn't say that. It says that frothy emotional appeals, this is what Dr. Silkwood is saying, frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. And so what I'll say to you is if you're new and you're having a tough time with alcohol or substances of any kind, if you're having a tough time, this program works. This is a miracle program. I had a crappy attitude when I was new. The only thing I did right was I stayed sober for one more day. Okay, I'm not going to quit forever. So one day at a time program, and maybe in a year I'm going to drink again because I can't swear this off forever. I've done that too many times. I've sworn it off so many times, I feel like a liar to myself. But I can stay sober today. And that's all I did. And if you're new, this thing works. It works if you work it. And it helps if you get somebody to help you through the steps. And I will, I'll put my number out there to anybody that wants a temporary sponsor, somebody to help them find a sponsor, somebody who wants to know, well, how does sponsorship work exactly? And if you're embarrassed to ask, stick around. I'll put my number, and anybody here, I'm guessing, who has even a little bit of time will want to be helpful to you. If you're new, that's why we meet. It says in the book, I wrote it down. We meet often so that newcomers will find the fellowship they seek. You know, I want to fast forward. I did the steps. The project that I started did extremely well, and I thought that's what the promises are. Not fear of economic insecurity will leave us, but we will have money. That's not what it says. But the project then that I worked on did very well. Some other projects didn't, but net things worked out. I did marry that amazing woman. I was working my way through step 9, and I thought, well, it might take me some time to do my amends, but I don't want to wait on step 10 because step 10 says, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry it out. I wanted to do that step, but I didn't know what meditation was. And I saw that pesky word and, sought through prayer and meditation. Because if it had said prayer or meditation, I'm always going to look for the easier, softer way. And for some reason, the woman that I had invited to come to LA, she did come after 6 months. She said she'll think about it. And that gave me 6 months to go to a meeting a day, almost. I didn't do 90 and 90 until COVID because I was defiant. I'm not going to do 90 and 90. It doesn't say you have to do 90 and 90. I mean, that's my attitude in early sobriety. I don't have to do that. You don't, I don't have to talk to you. I mean, not a great attitude, but I did do the things you guys told me to do that were out of the book. And I knew that my wife, we weren't married at the time, I knew that she was a meditator. And I said, what do I do? And she sat with me for a minute because I had such a loud mind. I sat before this meeting to meditate, specifically to calm myself down. And meditation always works for me. It's one of the greatest tools that I found in my life. And Tana sat with me for a minute and she said, it might be tough at first, might be tough in the first few weeks. And then we were sitting for 2 minutes and 5 minutes. And I do not have an opinion about how long you need to meditate for. There's some people who do a certain program and 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening, and they love that. And God bless them. And sometimes for me, if I can sit for a minute, it's enough. For me, 10 minutes at least is great. Tana taught me to meditate. Fast forward, that was in 1990, after she came to live in LA. Fast forward, we had a beautiful child together. My daughter Serena is 32, and she's never seen me take a drink or a drug. She's seen me lose my temper a few times. When I picked her up from college, we had to return the cable box, and I couldn't find where Verizon was in New Haven. So I was driving around and getting angry. But mostly, I've been a better father to her because of the tools that you guys taught me about. My alarm went off, and I think I have a few more minutes, 5 minutes. I'm going to wrap it up. So my wife, Tana, taught me how to meditate when I was in early sobriety. Meditation saved my sanity, saved my sobriety, saved my life, because fast forward, my wife got very ill in 2008. And in 2013, I was going to a morning meditation meeting in Santa Monica every morning at 7:30 to meditate and to have an AA meeting. And I really thought, God is not going to take Tana from me. That just doesn't make any sense. Thank you, Jay. That just doesn't make any sense. She's a good person. She would have come into AA. She wasn't an alcoholic, but if she had been an alcoholic, she'd be like one of the good people who didn't have a crappy attitude. She's a loving person. She's got a like. She's so close with my daughter. This just doesn't make sense. And I was angry at God, but I thought He's not going to take her away. And if I go to more meetings, that's going to keep her alive. And anyhow, before she died in October of 2013, I never had a thought of picking up a drink or a drug. And I had a thought of picking up a drink or a drug if I felt sadness around Christmas time back in the 1970s. If I felt disappointed, I would pick up a drink or a drug. If I was angry at my father, I would pick up a drink or a drug. For the smallest little things, I would reach for something that I knew could knock me out of where I was feeling instantly, even though I knew eventually I'm going to feel crappy for days now because I'm not going to stop until it's over. And I'm going to be up night after night and crazy, holding a gun in my hand, thinking the people are on the roof. But I would still use and drink crazily. But when Tana died, I never had the thought that I'm going to pick up, because I'm a father. I have to be there for my daughter. I've got to do the things to take care of Tana. And she was there when her mother died, and she was there to take her mother to be cremated and to be there for the whole thing. And I have to do these things. There's things I have to do to be a father and to say goodbye to my wife. It was really, really hard to go through that. And I'm so grateful that you guys, you taught me how to do AA and to keep coming back and to not pick up no matter what, no matter how I'm feeling. I don't like that. Feelings aren't facts. I would hear that a lot when I was new, because sometimes feelings feel really, really bad. But a feeling is not going to make me pick up a drink. That's a conscious choice that I don't want to make today. I've had a wonderful day. I woke up, I read page 86, which if you're new, it's in the big book, and it basically tells me what to do. You know, I I I ask God for help. I would always try to like, yeah, God for the big stuff, but I can handle this. I can handle dealing with my siblings about my dad who's 97. I can handle this. And then when the wheels come off, that's when I'll ask God for help. And it doesn't say that. It really says that I have it almost memorized, but we ask God for inspiration, right? That's so easy. Why don't I do it every day? I do it more when I read that in the morning, and I really try to read that and to meditate in the morning. I've got a few minutes left, and I'll say this. Another thing that I did in sobriety that was incredibly difficult for me was I had a knee surgery in 2007 in July. I had a floating piece of cartilage. It got into a very bad place, and every time the pain was unbelievable. And when I went to the doctor at Hospital for Special Surgery in New York, uh, after the operation, when he pulled out the cartilage piece that was floating around, he said, when you first showed up and you said it was really painful, I thought you were a drug seeker. That's what people do. That's what we do if we don't have a program. We get drugs no matter what, or alcohol no matter what. I really had the surgery, and I had to ask for help from someone. And I would say who that person is if it's okay. But that person is sitting in the room here tonight. And I said, listen, I know that you've worked in this field of hospice care, and you've had to help people who need painkillers. I'm being prescribed this medication after the surgery, and I just want to be able to call you before I take it and call you after, like a bookend. And that was the scariest time for me in my sobriety, because the drug was very powerful. I did use it as prescribed, and then I stopped using it before the bottle was empty. And this is a little bit of insanity I'll share with you. I didn't throw those pills away for Jay. I didn't throw them away for about 4, 5 longer. It was after Tana died. It was like 7 or 8 years. I kept them on a shelf in the Philippines because I thought, we come to the Philippines often, and I don't know if I have that pain again, if that pain comes back. And then also I can't flush them down the toilet because they might hurt the fish in the sewer. I mean, crazy thoughts. So even when I'm sober 30 X years, I need to go to more meetings. If I have time for one last anecdote. So it says in this part of a vision for you, and we read it every day in my morning meeting. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. And I'll just say this. I'm in a meeting, 2017, basement of a church in New York. It's 4 years after my wife has died. I'm angry at God. I'm telling you, I love God. God has been there for me. God kept me sober through all of these, just through so much. But I'm angry, and I'm missing Tana. I'm feeling sorry for myself. And I'm looking at the floor, and I'm thinking, why do I have to be in this meeting? I'm probably not going to ever drink again. I'll stay sober on ego. And all of a sudden, I hear this voice, and he's laughing. He's going, hey, I know that guy. And this guy's pointing his finger at me. And it's this guy, Jonathan W., who I met when I was brand new in 1989. And I hadn't seen him in over 20 years. And it blew my mind, because you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. I had coffee with John. He told me about his life. He jump-started my program. I had been going to enough meetings to stay sober. I was not experiencing happiness, joy, and freedom. And he jump started my program. And then from 2017 till 2020, I was going to more meetings. And then in 2020, I got back into my program full, getting into service, doing a grapevine commitment, which I had in early sobriety, doing a lot of commitments for a morning meeting, and you know, service is the service is the secret for me of happiness and joy and freedom in this program. I came to be a taker. What do you have? I'll stick around long enough to suck it all up, to get everything for me, and then I'm out of here. That really was my attitude. And then the Aikido move of, wait a minute, I'll get even more if I start giving and do service. Okay, I'll do that just so I can get more. But then God shows up and rockets me into the fourth dimension. And I'm so happy to be able to have a Christmas Eve like this. I don't know if it was any good for you, but this has been like the greatest Christmas present that anyone's ever given me. Jay, thank you so much for inviting me to show up today. And God bless everybody. If you're new, get my number. I'll try to be helpful if I can. Thank you.